Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
You know, there are times in one's life that you're tested and you have to make a decision and you learn something about yourself. You have to stand up for what you believe in. And those are usually times in which the standing up isn't easy to do. It's real easy to make easy decisions in life. Should I have chocolate cake or should I eat spoiled beets? The hard decisions are the ones in which you learn something about yourself. I was a guy who adamantly opposed Donald Trump when he was running for president in the Republican primaries. And I wasn't sure I could come around and endorse him or support him in the general election. I did a couple of months ago, and I shared this with the Rush audience the last time I was here. But, you know, every day that goes by, I'm way more comfortable with this decision. There is a story in the news today that just ratifies how I know I'm right. Bo Snerdley found this for me. For those of you who think that he doesn't earn his keep, he found this on bizpackreview.com. I don't know what that is, and I don't know why he was on that site, but he found this for me. If you learn anything else from me filling in for Rush today, then this story, I'll feel as though I've accomplished something. It has to do with Ivanka Trump, Donald's daughter, buying jewelry online. There's apparently some hotshot online jewelry operation that sells to Beyonce, Rihanna, a lot of celebrities. It's called Lady Grey Jewelry. Ivanka Trump made an online order from Lady Grey Jewelry. Now, you're probably thinking, so what? Listen to where this story goes. According to BizPack Review, the company's founders, Jill Martinelli and Sabine Le Gaillard, were flattered to receive the order from Ivanka Trump. But see, they don't agree with Donald's politics. So they included in the shipment to Ivanka of something called an ear cuff. What's an ear cuff? Does anybody know what an ear cuff is? Allie knows what an ear cuff is. Oh, it's like an earring, except you put it on the top of the ear. Is that what it is? All right, I've learned something. Well, apparently Ivanka wanted one of those. Included in the shipment was the following note. Dear Ivanka, thank you for your web order. We're happy to let you know that the proceeds of your sale have been generously donated to the American Immigration Council, the Everytown for Gun Safety Organization, and the Hillary Clinton campaign. We hope you enjoy your new Lady Grey Helix cuff. Best, Sabine and Jill. Now, if that wasn't obnoxious enough, they post it on Instagram. These two self-important, self-righteous, holier-than-thou, sanctimonious snobs. Ivanka Trump wants to buy something from them, for which they ought to be flattered. She's a beautiful and successful young woman. And instead, they decide to make her purchase all about them and how they aren't so unwashed as to dirty themselves with Donald Trump. This is how I know I'm on the right side when I back Trump. At some point, if you're in doubt as to whether or not you're in the right room or at the right party, just kind of look around you. We have some news today to share with the audience. First of all, Donald Trump gave a speech last night that was really remarkable. The media is focusing solely on the fact that he expressed regret for some of the things that he said during the campaign. There's a lot else in there that we're going to be getting to on the program today. Also, some hard news. Paul Manafort has resigned as the Trump campaign chairman. Some Hillary Clinton news also in terms of the staffing. Hillary Clinton has hired Ryan Lochte to be the campaign spokesperson. Says she likes the way he handles things. So, by the way, that part was made up. Do I have to explain when I'm making up things, or does the Rush audience get my humor yet? I haven't been here that long. I don't do the show that often. Anyway, you know what day of the week it is, which means that today Well, I'm glad it's Open Line Friday because I have something to say, and this is my open line for a moment. I mentioned at the top of the program that I was somebody that was resistant to Donald Trump. Right now, the Republican Party and the conservative movement really is divided into three groups. I'm in this middle group, and I think that there are millions of us there. Donald Trump was not our first choice. For some, he was their last choice. But he is now their choice, and we want him to win. And we want the Republicans to keep the Senate, keep their majority in the House. We want the governors that are running across the country that have conservative values and are Republican to win, state legislative members, and so on. There are millions of us in this category. We didn't want Trump. Maybe we wanted Cruz. Maybe we wanted Rubio. Maybe we wanted Rand Paul. Maybe we wanted Carson, whomever. Kasich. But we want Trump to win. That's one group. And of the three groups, it's the one that you hear from the least. Well, I'm a member of it, and I want to talk a little bit about this today. Then there are the other two groups. There are the really, really adamant pro-Trumpers. They've been with Donald from the beginning. They found his message enthralling and refreshing, and they believe that we need someone like him. We need him, in fact, they believe, to change America and to fix the country. That group is there, and they've been with Trump from the very beginning, from when he declared his candidacy. And then you have the never-Trumpers, the people that will not support Trump, even though they are Republicans, they are conservatives. They believe that Trump is the wrong person. They believe that Trump would damage the Republican Party. They don't trust Trump to govern. They think he's irresponsible. They think he's reckless. And we all know that's the breakdown. Just about everybody out there who is a Republican or a conservative fits into one of those three categories. And we all have a right to be in any of those groups. You have an absolute right as an American to support Donald Trump wholeheartedly. You have an absolute right as an American to support Trump because he's the nominee and he's the best vehicle to advance as much of what you believe in. That's the group I'm in. And you have every right as an American to not support Trump. However, people on both of those extreme sides need to be called out. Not all of them, some of them. I want to start with the never-Trumpers who can't keep their big mouths shut, who every day have to come out and proclaim how awful Trump is, or to stand up and in an attempt to draw attention to themselves as to how enlightened that they are. They won't lower themselves by getting down there in the dirt with Donald Trump. Like we've got some clown today, the former finance chairman for Mitt Romney's campaign, David Nierenberg. He writes an op-ed that appears on CNBC. He's endorsing Hillary Clinton. Oh, good for him. You got your 2 minutes of fame. You're a Republican that's endorsing Hillary Clinton. I'm referring to my friends at the Weekly Standard, which is a great magazine, the National Review, which is a great magazine, and quite a few others. It's one thing to say that you're not going to support Trump. It's one thing to say that you consider Trump even to be dangerous. You don't have to keep piling on every single day, because what you are doing is you are demoralizing millions of people who might otherwise go out and vote for the Republican ticket and for other Republicans. We get it. You don't like Trump. We get it. You don't think that he's right for the country. You think he's the wrong guy, and you think that it's bad for the Republican Party. Do you really need to make it the only subject you talk about day in and day out? I talk a lot about the sanctimoniousness of the left. This is the sanctimoniousness of an elite part of the right. Now, in my own program in Milwaukee, I made a vow, wasn't so much a vow as a statement, that I was not going to criticize those people who couldn't bring themselves around to vote for Donald Trump, because I understand where they're coming from. And I understand the reservations they've had with him because I had them myself. I'm not referring, in this little diatribe here, to those of you who just can't bring yourself to vote for Trump. I'm referring to those whose constant proclamations of their beliefs here are all about themselves and not about Trump and not about the Republican Party and not about the election. There's a lot of, hey, look at me. I'm special. I'm not one of those dumb Republicans that's going to fall for Donald Trump. I'm a smarter one. I'm an enlightened one. I see through Trump. This is all about you posing for your own portrait of self-enlightenment. Well, what you're doing in the process is that you're damaging the cause that you claim that you care about by your constant on and on and on and on trashing of Trump and therefore trashing of anybody who would vote for Trump. Do you really want the Republican voter turnout to be so depressed this fall that they lose the Senate? What does that help? That they lose good members of the House of Representatives? Who does that help? There are Republicans in swing House districts that are now in trouble because everybody knows that the Republican Party is divided and Republican turnout might be lowered. Well, I blame a good chunk of that on the people that are out there that are just obsessed with mocking and ridiculing every Trump supporter. And for that matter, unnecessarily piling on to Trump. And how about that? Okay, we get that you don't like Trump. Your contribution to the bashing of Trump is unnecessary. We have enough of that from the media and from the left. Don't worry, they'll handle the pounding on Trump for everything that Trump does or everything that Trump says that they don't like. We really don't need your contribution on this. That pretty much is covered. That job is taken care of. He's running against the Hillary Clinton sleaze machine. He's running against the mainstream media. They're going to have more than enough material to hammer him with that we really don't need to have. This constant carping from the right-wing peanut gallery as to how terrible he is. As I say, I am not referring to the people who are merely expressing an opinion. I'm referring to those that have to be so unbelievably over the top about it and can't, if they're a columnist, write about any other subject. And yes, I am talking about you, Jonah Goldberg, who I like and whose stuff I read. Can you write any column, Jonah, that isn't about Donald Trump? Or are you trying to draw so much attention to yourself with your anti-Trump beliefs and how terrible and awful that Donald Trump is just to put yourself in a different category and be noticed? In other words, it's all about you. Some of us don't appreciate it, even if we agree with a lot of the points that you make. But then there's the other side. There are a lot of people who backed Trump from the beginning who now evidently don't want Trump to win because they insist on promoting divisiveness and rancor even though their guy won. I'm turning my attention out to the other side. Trump, yes, he won by running against the Republican establishment. He won. He now is part of the Republican establishment. He's the nominee. Yet you have some people out there that have developed a cottage industry now in trying to keep bashing every other Republican and conservative, even though your guy won. Well, how does that help? I firmly believe, and I guess I'm in the minority here, I firmly believe that Trump can still win this election. He's running against a lying criminal. That does help his cause. I believe he can still win. But he's not going to win if the people who claim that they support him are kicking people out of the tent saying you're not pure enough. I'll expand on that in a moment here. Yes, I have a few things that I'd like to say as long as I've been given this platform. My name is Mark Belling, and I'm filling in for Rush. Now, some people may think that I was being a little bit too harsh on the Never Trumpers. Well, I've got a few harsh things to say on some, not most, some of those who claim to be adamant pro-Trumpers. Why do you insist on poking in the eye those that are coming around to back your guy? Well, they're not enthusiastic enough, or they're still part of the problem. Maybe they are, but you need them right now. And if you want Trump to win, you can't keep insulting people who are willing to vote for and even support Donald Trump. I was part of something back in Milwaukee. Congressman Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House of Representatives. His district is in my listening area. He's the southeastern corner of the state of Wisconsin. He had to put up with a Republican primary challenge this month. The guy that ran against him never had any chance of winning. He was a terrible candidate. You should have heard the radio commercials that he was running. They were as snide and obnoxious and condescending as anything that you ever hear from the left. They were trying to sell something that Ryan's district wasn't buying. They tried to claim that Paul Ryan was a betrayer. He ran that Paul Ryan lacked a soul. Well, the people in Ryan's district, who are people who listen to my program, they didn't buy that. They know Paul Ryan. They may not agree with him on everything. And they also understand that being Speaker of the House means that he's going to be taking stands that they may not like. But they think that he is a conservative. They believe that he has served his community well, and they know that he is in touch with his district. Ryan got 84% of the vote. But he had to come home and take this threat seriously. His volunteers had to go out and campaign, and in the meantime put up with nothing but insults from people who claim that they're from the Donald Trump wing of the Republican Party. If you are from the Donald Trump wing of the Republican Party, the problem right now is not Paul Ryan. The problem is Hillary Clinton. The problem is the New York Times. The problem is the Los Angeles Times. The problem is a mainstream media and an establishment that is mortified of Donald Trump winning. That is who you need to focus your attention on. Instead, the people who support Paul Ryan had to put up with 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of insults. They were told that Ryan's a betrayer. No, he's not. But when you say that, you're saying that the people who support Paul Ryan are betrayers. There are a lot of people who support Paul Ryan's stances on trade and immigration and other issues. And that wing of the Republican Party is as necessary to Trump winning as the people that are more to the Donald Trump side of things. The primaries are over. Trump won. We had a convention. He accepted the nomination. Now, admittedly, Trump himself sometimes provokes this stuff. He has this total inability to let some things go. He hears some Republicans not expressing enough warmth for his campaign, and he feels a need to fire back. And as I've said before, I think that some of those people that don't like Trump need to hush themselves up as well. If you want to beat Hillary Clinton, which is a tall order, this is a remarkable machine that they have. If you want to beat her, you need to start developing some alliances here in which the people that are behind Donald Trump from every wing of the Republican Party and every wing of conservatism start getting along with one another and treating one another with respect. And I see a lot of problems on this coming from people on both sides. Again, I'm not criticizing most never-Trumpers, and I'm not criticizing most of the adamant pro-Trumpers. I'm criticizing those that are so full of themselves that on both sides here are taking advantage of the Trump campaign and taking advantage of the fact that not all Republicans are on the same page to promote disunity and move themselves forward. There are some charlatans on the right. They've tried to hijack the Tea Party movement. They're focused solely on running primary elections just because they need jobs to pay their consultant fees and align the salaries from their super PAC leadership. Those people are as to blame for the divide that we have right now as anyone else. Mark Belling in for Rush. If you've missed any portion of Rush's show this past week, you can catch up by joining the members side of the website. That's Rush 24/7, and you can do that by going to rushlimbaugh.com. Time for me to give you the phone numbers. It is 1-800-282-2882. Did I say that right? 1-800-282-2882 is the phone number here. I spent the first half hour of the program talking about the frustration that I have with people on the extreme wings of conservatism right now that seem to be hell-bent on leading the party to a humiliating defeat. On the one hand, you have pro-Trumpers that are almost willing to sacrifice Trump's election because they want to purge the Republican Party of virtually everybody. And then you've got people on the other side that believe that Trump would be so damaging that they're willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater and let everybody else lose as both sides just draw attention to how wonderful and enlightened they are by not being part of this whole Trump movement. Whether you're enthusiastically for Trump or for Trump just because he isn't Hillary Clinton, your votes count the same. And if you want to win, you've got to start getting along. Now, I want to talk about on the program today the speech that Trump gave last night in North Carolina, because this is the first indication of the influence on the campaign of the new leadership of the campaign. I was very impressed by it. Clearly, you have to find a balance between the letting Trump be Trump and running a campaign that has discipline and message. Successful presidential campaigns focus on 2 or 3 or 4 points and hammer them home relentlessly. Remember Bill Clinton's campaign of 92 run by Carville? It's the economy, stupid. They just honed and focused and focused and focused and hammered on that. You need to do that. On the other hand, to take Donald Trump and put him in front of a teleprompter and make him constantly stay on a script, as they were trying to do, that doesn't work either. It's like taking a wild animal and putting him in a cage. They're going to resist the cage. You have to find a happy medium here in which Trump speaks on the issues that are true to Trump and what he believes in, but also keep him focused enough on the fact that he doesn't keep wandering off all scattershot and focusing on things that don't matter. I thought it was a sincere address, while clearly written by someone. It seemed to come from Trump. And it wasn't just I regret some of the statements that I've made and some of the things that I've said, which I do think he needed to do. He showed for once a little bit of humility, but also showed that I think that he is dedicated to winning, and he showed a commitment and caring for the country, which is the reason why he says that he's running for this in the first place. People keep talking, well, is there another pivot, and is this going to hold? Is Trump going to run off and says he's going to be one way and then go back the other? All of those are fair questions. I was impressed by this, and I think he's in the game, and I think he can still win this election. Look what he is running against. He's running against an opponent with very, very high negatives. And I think that the people who have adamantly decided that they're not going to vote for Clinton, they are more locked in than the people who have adamantly decided that they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. Let's go to the phones right now on the Rush program. Carmel, Indiana, and Dan. Dan, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show with Mark Belling.
Yeah, I'm a Cruz supporter, and as a Cruz supporter, I think it'd be important for us to vote for Trump because Hillary is after, and the Republicans will not stop her, just like they didn't try to stop Obama. And yet, I believe if Trump does start doing something illegal or whatever that everybody's afraid of, then I think the Democrats will stand up and stop him. So I think we have more to worry about from Hillary than we do to worry about from Trump.
Well, I'm not going to take your bait on the first point about Republicans not trying to stop Obama, because I think that they have tried to stop Obama, but that's neither here nor there. I was wandering all over the map in the primaries. I initially supported the governor from my own state, Scott Walker. His campaign lasted about 4 minutes. I then backed Marco Rubio. He fizzled. I then got behind Cruz, and I was fairly convinced that Ted Cruz was the guy. I thought that he represented enough of the anti-establishment wing, but also strong conservative policy background, that he'd be the ideal candidate. Well, he lost too. So I struck out once, I struck out twice, and I struck out a third time. I'm with Donald Trump for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And I do understand that not everybody is going to be there. And I also understand that some of the people who are really adamantly pro-Trump have been very frustrated with the Republican Party and think that it's just another version of the Democrats. I understand that people who are anti-trade and people who are really strong in the immigration issue think that the Republicans haven't been there. The point that I'm trying to make in the little rant that I'm doing here is that everybody needs one another right now. And whatever you think of the Paul Ryan wing of the party or the Ted Cruz wing of the party or even the Jeb Bush wing of the party, the problem is Hillary Clinton. Not only is she worse than any of the people that you seem to be so angered with in the Republican Party on virtually everything, she is a corrupt, lying, dishonest person who will take this country, which has been sliding for 8 years, and make matters undeniably worse. And if it happens with a wipeout of everything Republican everywhere else, we aren't going to have any line of defense. So I guess I'm encouraging people here to start thinking with their heads and not with their egos, because a lot of this is being driven by ego. Thank you for the call, Dan. Let's go now to Canton, Ohio. Tom, you're on the Rush Limbaugh program with Mark Belling.
Good afternoon, Mark. Thank you so much for taking my call. This is absolutely, I think, an imperative time in the course of American history. It's just unfortunate that right now we have the huge polarization within the Republican Party. And what I feel that a lot of these folks that are not necessarily on board with Trump and or the never Trumpers is that they have not thoroughly looked at the Republican platform. They put out a beautiful platform at the convention, and all folks need to do is get online and check out the platform, understand the differences of what the vision for America is. That was put together by many people. Obviously, Mr. Trump has a huge influence as to a lot of the direction in it, but it is not all Donald J. Trump.
No, but what they don't like is they don't like Trump. And I get that. There are things about Trump that a lot of people, including myself, don't like. I get where they're coming from. My criticism of them isn't merely that they're not supporting Trump, that they are bending over backwards to not only trash Trump, but trash everybody who supports Trump. And I think that they reveal something about themselves. This notion that Trump and Hillary are equally bad is absurd. If you believe in anything and you claim that you're a conservative, you can't be coming to that conclusion. They are not equally bad. I get the fear that Trump is going to redefine republicanism as to something that it currently is not. I understand that. You can, however, when Trump is elected president, you can fight those battles then. You're not going to be able to establish anything, any Republican Party that stands for anything when Hillary Clinton is running the presidency and the Democrats have control of the United States Senate. She'll understand that that's probably only a 2-year thing. They will go as far to the left with regard to the judicial nominees as Obama did. They'll try to roll the Republicans in the Congress. All of this is a result of people that I think are taking advantage of this schism within the Republican Party to advance themselves. And as I say, it's working on both sides. Thank you for the call. I made reference in the last segment to some of these primaries that are being run. Let me explain to you why some of these operatives show up to start running against prominent Republicans. There are only so many elections in the United States. There are only 100 members of the Senate, and only 33, 34 of them come up every 2 years. Most governors are elected on 4-year terms. We have so many political operatives and so many people that want to get involved in the Political Action Committee racket, the PAC business. There aren't enough elections for them. Take the United States Senate races right now. There are probably 12 to 14 races that are competitive across the United States. All of those candidates on both sides, they've got their consultants, they've got their media team, they've got their own PACs in place that are going to back them. Same thing with the House. There are probably 25 to 30 House races that are truly competitive in the United States. All of those candidates, Republican and Democrat, have their staffs in place, they have their backers in place, and so on. What you have are a lot of people who aren't part of that loop. And they understand that there's big money to be made in American politics. You put together a political action committee that is run supposedly independent of the candidate's campaign. You can raise money in an unlimited amount from whomever you want, and you get broad latitude on how you spend your money. Well, this is a dirty little secret that's been exposed by a few people. A lot of those political action committees do nothing, virtually nothing, but pay themselves big salaries. They make a lot of money doing this. They're called scam PACs. The Paul Ryan opposition did not exist because anybody thought Ryan was going to lose. I was there in Wisconsin. It was comical. They picked a goofball candidate that no one liked. They had a bunch of out-of-state operators coming in and doing all sorts of things that offend Wisconsinite sensibilities. But you know what they did? They raised a lot of money. Was some of it from the left? I suspect. But probably a lot of it came from sincere conservatives. I've got a story here from Politico.com that crossed a few days ago called How We Killed the Tea Party. It was written by a guy who it was part of an operation to hijack one of these conservative Tea Party organizations that had initially been formed by people who weren't in it for the money. They were in it because they were interested in some of the issues that were first raised by the Tea Party movement. But a lot of people realized that if they took control of these organizations, they could use them to raise a lot of money. And where do you think that money has gone? It's as bad as some of the charities that are out there that spend all this money on administration. Well, this is what's going on the right. There are some people who are in it because we care. There are people like myself and Rush who are in it because it's our jobs, and we have some credibility on the line when we lay out our opinions to people. But then there are hacks and hucksters. For them, politics really is a game. They often talk about the establishment being dirty. Well, they're just as dirty. What they are parasites, and they're sucking the life out of the conservative movement. They foment division because they want to have division because it allows them to run these campaigns and raise this money all for themselves. Well, if you don't ever win anything, you're not going to change public policy. If my side doesn't win Obamacare, train wreck that it is, it's there for 4 years. There's not going to be a border wall if Hillary Clinton wins. There's not going to be a sincere attempt to go after terrorism if Hillary Clinton wins. But some of these charlatans that are out there promoting all of this divisiveness and raising all of this money for their phony little PAC operations, they don't care about that because they're getting rich off of it. And as I say, there is blame here on both sides, and it's the voters that are being sold out. I'm Mark Bellingham for Rush Limbaugh. Mark Bellingham for Rush. Back to the phones. Klamath Falls, Oregon. Annie, it's your turn on the Rush Limbaugh program with Mark Belling.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks.
I've been a Trump supporter since day one, and after Trump's speech last night, I just wanted to make an appeal to the Cruz supporters. A month ago, Rush had a gal on. She was a Cruz supporter, and she said that the election was over for her, and she and her husband would never vote this year, which was appalling to me. And then I had a gal in my house trying to sign me up to be a precinct leader last week that said she and her husband were Cruz supporters. They'd never vote for Trump, and they weren't going to vote this year. And, you know, I voted since I was 21. I'm now 61, and I haven't always liked who I voted for, but I voted, you know, reluctantly. And last election, with over 23 million evangelicals staying home, look what we got. So I think that evangelicals have to stop waiting for a choir boy to run for office and get behind the man that's going to give evangelicals a voice and not try to silence us. And so I just hope that you know, Cruz supporters like you can get over their offenses or concerns and gather together so we can make a difference. You know, Trump's a fighter. He's not going to back down. He's not a career politician.
It isn't just
going to put up.
It isn't just getting behind him. It's understanding that Trump isn't the only person on the ticket. And that's why I say that this thing works both ways. There are a lot of people who supported Cruz or Rubio or some of the others. Well, guess what? There are several Republican United States senators that are probably very close in ideology to these folks. They're going to go down too if everybody is so demoralized and stays home. I appreciate that some people are saying, okay, I'm going to go out and I won't vote in the presidential election, but I'll vote for these other Republicans down the line. But a lot of the casual voters who are getting this pounding on Trump from the right, they're going to stay home altogether. What does that accomplish for those people who think that Trump isn't pure enough on Republican issues? There's damage that's done by the constant promotion of this divisiveness. As I mentioned, there are hang-ups that I have with Donald Trump. I think he addressed some of them in that very outstanding address that he gave last night. I do have concern that Trump, on some issues, may pursue an agenda that is not the one that I believe in. I think that he might be too far to the left, for example, on some social issues. But I know this, and it's a pretty easy calculation for me. I have there is a 100% chance that Hillary Clinton will be a terrible president. There's a good chance she'll even be worse than Obama. There's about a 50% chance Donald Trump will be really good, about a 25% chance that he'll be okay to fair, and maybe a 20 to 25% chance that he's going to be a poor president. That's how I evaluate things. Well, I got a 75% chance of things being pretty good as opposed to a 100% chance of a nightmare. That math is very, very easy for me to figure out. I think what you have right now in the conservative movement, especially with social media now giving everyone a platform, there are a lot of people who want everyone to look at them as they take this stance, either being one toward purging the entire Republican Party of everyone, or on the other side, not wanting to associate themselves with Donald Trump, feeling as though we can ride out Hillary Clinton. And I've heard a few of them say, well, we rode out Obama. Did we? Look at the world around us right now. Look at ISIS. Look at what's going on in Syria. Have we really ridden this out? Look at the time bomb that we now have with a brand new entitlement that's going bust Obamacare. Did we really ride it out? Is this the direction that our country can just sustain forever? Anyway, my name is Mark Belling, and I'm filling in today for Rush Limbaugh. A lot of things going on in the news today. The State Department now acknowledging that maybe there was a connection to the hostages with the $400 million in cash that was in the plane. Gee, could it have been that Obama lied to us? Are we being lied to again? I do want to dive into the whole Ryan Lochte story and what happened down there and how what apparently was a tall tale just spiraled out of control on him. A lot of things to discuss on today's program, and we're going to continue to discuss this divide within the Republican Party right now, created by the candidacy of Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton is the most dishonest person, in my knowledge, ever to become one of the major party nominees for president. Not only that, her policies are terribly wrong. I'm practical enough to try to make the best of the situation that we're in. And I also am speaking for myself, and I think representing the opinions of millions of Americans here. Let's conduct a little social experiment here. I don't mean at the very beginning when he said he was robbed, but I mean when the story was challenged. When you heard Ryan Lochte report that he was robbed and you initially heard that there were questions about it, go back 2 or 3 days. Did you believe him or not? I didn't, but I admit, doing what I've been doing now for decades, being a talk radio host and before that, a news reporter in places like the Illinois State Capitol in Springfield, Illinois, I've been exposed to so much lying. It is impossible for me not to be a cynic. It's getting hard to believe anybody about anything anymore. So I wonder, the people that initially bought Lochte's story, are they primarily Hillary Clinton supporters? In other words, they simply buy everything without regard to how fantastic it sounds? Or not? I don't know the answer to that. But I do bet this. I bet the Clinton supporters are the ones that aren't really bothered by the fact that Lochte and the other swimmers evidently made up that story. Because if you're a Hillary Clinton supporter, you have had to work yourself into not just the rationalization of, but a total acceptance of lying. You can't back Hillary and be bothered by lying, since lying is at the core of who she is. It's all she ever does. And evidently now all Obama ever does. Anyway, I spent some time in the first hour of the program talking about the presidential race and this divide within not only the Republican Party, but the conservative movement created by Donald Trump and the anger that the anti-Trumpers have and the persistence of some, not most, but some, on the pro-Trump crowd of being more determined to still keep fighting with Republicans than fight with Hillary Clinton. In the meantime, since the convention, I don't think anyone would deny that Trump has had a hard run of things. There's been a shakeup. It's the second one, and it appears to have been completed today with the resignation of Paul Manafort as the campaign chairman. I want to analyze this for a moment. Manafort was brought in the middle of the primary run when Donald Trump was knocking off victory after victory after victory. And it dawned on, I think, Trump and his people, we might win. And the idea was that you needed to get somebody who was a professional political operative to run the campaign. For one thing, they didn't have any delegate strategy in the state. They were running the risk of having all of these delegates going to the convention who didn't support Trump. They didn't know if there'd be a floor fight at the convention that they had to win, so they figured, let's bring in a political pro. So they brought in Manafort. The first thing Manafort tried to do was change Donald Trump. He got up and he gave the interviews on the Sunday morning talk shows, and he said there's going to be a pivot. He said, well, Trump acts like this, but that isn't the real Donald Trump. The real Donald Trump is something other than that. And I think what you've had ever since is this clash between the Manafort wing of the Trump campaign and really Trump himself in managing the way Donald Trump appears and communicates. So you get these moments in which he give the teleprompter speech one day and seemed to reach out and do what he was being told to do. And the next day he was back to tweeting, seemingly off page. It was all disjointed. And I think that the problem here was they were trying to package Donald Trump as someone that Donald Trump is not. This is not the first thing this time this has happened. I recall back in the 80s, there were people who tried to stop Ronald Reagan from being Ronald Reagan. I remember the great mantra is, let Reagan be Reagan. Now, Donald Trump isn't Ronald Reagan, and I don't want to pretend that he is. But you can't package a candidate. You can't package somebody like Trump, to whom the American public has such familiarity with, and make him something that he is not. So this latest restart, I don't know about the one guy, Ben, and I don't know about him because I don't know him, and I don't know about coming from Breitbart and so on, but I do know about Kellyanne Conway. She is really good. First of all, she's a conservative. She's taken a lot of heat in her career for being a female, outspoken, and a conservative. But I've always had the impression that she gets it. She is very good at taking candidates and presenting their message in a way that it's a winning message for mainstream Americans. She's able to get Republicans to speak in a way that communicates with a lot of people who might initially be resistant to them. And I think promoting her to the position of campaign manager, and I think putting her in charge of style, is the right thing to do. The first indication of this was the speech that Trump gave last night in North Carolina. Now, we can't go through the whole thing because it was long. But it was an extraordinary speech, and I think it was an attempt by the new people running the campaign and by Trump himself to have Trump come forward in a way that is true to Trump, but also a little bit more disciplined. Not 98 million different messages taking shots all over the place, but focus on the 3 or 4 things that are most important to him. Give him a message. I'm telling you, every winning candidate that has won the presidency in my lifetime had a message that you could narrow down to 5, 10, 15 words. And Trump needed that. But he also needed to communicate to the people who have been rubbed the wrong way by some of his antics. I have the entire copy of the speech here, and I'm not going to read Donald Trump's speech. Donald Trump can speak for himself. But there are a few paragraphs here that I think are remarkable that I want to share with the audience. First, he addressed the concern that a lot of people have about his style and his behavior. As you know, I am not a politician. I have worked in business, creating jobs and rebuilding neighborhoods my entire adult life. I've never wanted to learn the language of the insiders, and I've never been politically correct. It takes far too much time and can often be more difficult. Sometimes, in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words, you say the wrong thing. I have done that, and I regret it, particularly where it may have caused personal pain. Too much is at stake for us to be consumed with these issues. Now, is that an apology for the comments about Megyn Kelly? Is it an apology for what he said about Ted Cruz's father? Not directly, but everybody knows what he means. He's referring to incidents like this, but then he continues. But one thing I can promise you is this: I will always tell you the truth. I speak the truth for all of you and for everyone in this country who doesn't have a voice. I think that that is an outstanding point that he makes, that you have to differentiate between the bluster and, in some cases, the obnoxiousness of some of the tweets with somebody who is going to level with you, because he's running against someone who can't level with us. It's not in her DNA. Honesty is something that can't come to Hillary Clinton. She just can't do it. He then continues, I refuse to let another generation of American children be excluded from the American dream. Our whole country loses when young people of limitless potential are denied the opportunity to contribute their talents because we fail to provide them the opportunities they deserve. Let our children be dreamers too. Our whole country loses every time a kid doesn't graduate from high school or fails to enter the workforce, or worse still, is lost to the dreadful world of crime and drugs. In the world I come from, if something is broken, you fix it. If something isn't working, you replace it. If a product doesn't deliver, you make a change. That language seems to me authentic to Trump, rather than something that a speechwriter simply put in front of him, where he's reading it as if it was coming from someone else. I think that that's a message that's true to Trump, that they're trying to find language here that is authentic to Donald Trump. He continues, I have no patience for injustice, no tolerance for government incompetence, no sympathy for leaders who fail their citizens. That's why I'm running, to end the decades of bitter failure and to offer the American people a new future of honesty, justice, and opportunity, a future where America and its people always, and I mean always, come first. Aren't you tired of the same old lies and the same old broken promises? And Hillary Clinton has proven to be one of the greatest liars of all time. He said that in the same speech in which he makes it clear there are some things during the campaign, during the primaries, that he regretted saying. He's making it very clear that he doesn't regret anything about these attacks here on Hillary Clinton. Aren't you tired of arrogant leaders who look down on you instead of serving you and protecting you? In this journey, I will never lie to you. I will never tell you something I do not believe. I will never put anyone's interests ahead of yours, and I will never, ever stop fighting for you. So while sometimes I can be too honest, Hillary Clinton is the exact opposite. She never tells the truth. One lie after another, and getting worse each passing day. The American people are still waiting for Hillary Clinton to apologize for all of the many lies she's told to them, and the many times she's betrayed them. Tell me, has Hillary Clinton ever apologized for lying about her illegal email server and deleting 33,000 emails? Has Hillary Clinton apologized for turning the State Department into a pay-for-play operation where favors are sold to the highest bidder? Has she apologized for lying to the families who lost loved ones at Benghazi? Has she apologized for putting Iran on the path to nuclear weapons? Has she apologized for Iraq, for Libya, for Syria? Has she apologized for unleashing ISIS across the world? Has Hillary Clinton apologized for the decisions she made that have led to so much death, destruction, and terrorism? Please remember this. I will never put personal profit before national security. I will never leave our border open to appease donors and special interests. I will never support a trade deal that kills American jobs. I will never put the special interest before the national interest. I will never put a donor before a voter or a lobbyist before a citizen. And then, finally, we are going to bring this country together. We are going to do it by emphasizing what we all have in common as Americans. We are going to reject the bigotry of Hillary Clinton, which sees communities of color only as votes and not as human beings worthy of a better future. If Trump can stick to this type of language and focus on these areas, I believe he can win. I think that that's a message that reaches out to a lot of people. The problem Trump has had has been that he doesn't stick to these types of messages because he keeps reacting to everything. Well, just as I was encouraging people that are really anti-Trump and really pro-Trump to right now not react to everything and focus on the priority, Trump needs to do that too. But I think what we see here is that he's now comfortable with the people surrounding him in his campaign, and I think he's found a voice, and I think he's found a message, and I think it's a good message. As you know, I'm not someone who's been a big fan of Donald Trump, but I agree with just about everything he said there. He's finding areas to unite conservatives rather than tear everything apart. If he can stay with this type of message and portray himself as a contrast to the lying and insider dealing of Hillary Clinton and say that the change that he is offering is a sincere one and that he's actually a politician who's coming to represent the public, I still think he can win. And I don't think this is over. I'm Mark Belling, in for Rush Limbaugh. 1-800-282-2882 is the phone number, and it is Open Line Friday. Time to talk to some folks. Fallbrook, California. John, you're on EIB with Mark Belling.
Hi. Hi, Mark. Hey, thank you very much for taking my call. And I just wanted to make a point that how can we hold this poor swimmer, Ryan Lochte, accountable when his role models are our president, who's a big liar, and Secretary of State, who's a big liar? And also, how come the media isn't as hard on the president and the Secretary of State? And look what they're doing to this poor Ryan kid. So that's
well, I'm not going to give him a poor Ryan kid because you know what?
I know.
You know what? I've been, and first of all, he's not a kid. I swear, Ryan Lochte and Michael Phelps seem to have been swimming in the Olympics. I think they actually beat Mark Spitz once. They've been around for a long time, so I'm not going to give them a pass on that. But you make some excellent points. And I want to run with your point if I can for a second, John, so thank you for the call. The point that he makes is, how can you expect a guy like Lochte to tell the truth when we've had a Secretary of State who's lied and married to a husband who lied to us for 8 years and now a president of the United States who lied? The first part of the Ryan Lochte thing that people are having a hard time with is, why did he do it? And I think that this was a lie that just got out of control. He was actually outed by his own mother. He apparently had talked to her and said, hey, we were robbed. And why did he tell her that when he wasn't? I don't know. Was he covering up something that they're 4 young guys, something that they did that they shouldn't have done? Or was he telling a story, or was he just bragging? I don't know. But she then told someone else. We're living in the age of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all sorts of other social medias that I don't know the name of. And the story just got out there. So then people started asking them. And NBC asked Lochte. And the reason they never went to the police, obviously, is that it wasn't true. And the lie just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they kept chasing the same lie. In the meantime, the Brazilian authorities, they resent the fact that these Americans are out there running around. They got enough crime problems as it is without a bunch of Americans making up that they were criminals. But, and this is where the caller makes an excellent point, this story of Lochte and the untruths has been chased and chased aggressively by the media for days. It's on page 1 of just about every newspaper in America. I have never seen that zeal chasing the lying of Hillary Clinton. Could we have used that zeal after the attack in Benghazi, when they were lying to us and telling us that it was all about a protest over a video and not a terrorist attack? Could we have used that zeal when she got up and started telling the lies about the emails? Oh, I just needed to have everything on one device. Lie. I didn't delete any emails. Lie. There were no confidential emails. Lie. There was never any pursuit of that. There's discussion now that this is going to damage Ryan Lochte's ability. By the way, the guys who get a break are the other 3 swimmers. Nobody can name any of them. They can only name Lochte, and I guess that's because the thing started with Lochte. They're saying that Ryan Lochte's endorsement potential is limited. You don't make a lot of money by swimming in the pool. The money all comes from the endorsement deals when you endorse the Speedos and the swim equipment and all of the other stuff, and you do training endorsements and you make personal appearances, that he has damaged his brand. Well, if so, that's probably good, that lying has harmed him. But think about that for a minute. Getting caught in one lie about one incident down in Rio de Janeiro can affect your ability to get endorsements. Lying for all 70 years of your life and all 40 years of your public life, though, can get you elected president of the United States. There's something warped about that. There's something really screwy when we get angrier with a swimmer for concocting one story that got out of control than we do with a presidential candidate who lied to our face again and again and again about matters pertaining to foreign policy and national security. Her lying started, so far as we know, with the cattle futures deal. The lying continued through Whitewater. The lying continued when she said she didn't have the Rose Law Firm billing records. The lying continued when she got up there and lied about the women who were making allegations against her husband. As Secretary of State, the lying continued all the way through the administration. She lied about Benghazi. And then, when she's caught exposing all of our national security secrets to the world with her email, she lies about that. Lying is her M.O. It's the thing that she does. Yet, many of the people appalled at Ryan Lochte who's a goofy swimmer with changing hair color, they're accepting of Hillary Clinton. The problem here is that what the Clintons have done is they have made lying acceptable to us. That's where this all starts. When we accepted Bill Clinton's ability to lie under oath, perjury, when he was impeached for that, but the Democrats in the Senate refused to convict him and remove him from office, we took a giant leap in this country in which we said that if the situation calls for it, why not lie? After all, lying's not that bad. That is where it all starts. I still think most Americans are resistant to it, which is why we are bothered when a case like Lochte comes up. Well, if we're really that bothered, should we be electing a president of the United States whose career is defined by lying? The September issue of the Limbaugh Letter. Rush is going to have an interview with Mike Pence. It is kind of interesting that there hasn't been a lot of attention given to either of the vice presidential candidates. Let's be honest about this. Both Trump and Hillary are kind of up there in years. The fact of the matter is that whichever one of them wins, there is a very plausible scenario in which the vice president could become the president based on what we're seeing with Hillary. I mean, I don't know how many legs she's got left to stand on, for heaven's sakes. Mike Pence and the selection of him by Donald Trump is the best indication we have had of what type of president Trump would be. I'm told again and again and again by the never-Trumpers, Mark, he's just going to sell out. He's going to move to the left. It's going to be lefties on the Supreme Court. They're going to be lefties in the cabinet. You know that that's what's going to happen. Well, no, I don't know that. Donald Trump has chosen a grand total of one person so far to be in the government with him. He's chosen the man who would be his vice president if he wins. Mike Pence, I thought, was a great pick. He comes from the wing of conservatism that I'm in. He doesn't get to name his Supreme Court justices yet, but he's told us the list that they would come from. He's talked about the type of justices he'd be interested in. And as he's fleshed out a policy platform, he may be a little bit too far out there on certain issues for my taste and nowhere near far enough out there on other issues for my taste. But he keeps bringing up the names of people that I respect. There's a lot right now from the Never Trump movement of just denial of reality in which they're trying to pretend that Trump is doing things that he isn't doing. And I say this again as somebody who's never been a big cheerleader for Donald Trump. On this whole lying issue that we've been talking about, it was only a couple of weeks ago that President Obama held that news conference in which he was asked about the $400 million that the Wall Street Journal found out that we delivered to Iran in cash on an airplane. Do y'all remember that answer? I watched that news conference. He had that look. He gets this certain look when he just can't believe that he, Barack Obama, should have to deign to answer such stupid questions. He got that look where he sort of rolls his eyes and sticks his big nose up in the air and looked at us like we were so stupid for not understanding that this is a payment that was scheduled all along. This had nothing to do with any type of ransom. It had nothing to do with the hostages. He looked at us like it was just terrible that he should even have to answer the question. Well, guess what? We now learn that the plane didn't leave the ground and wasn't turned over, that the contents of the plane, I guess I should say, was not turned over to the Iranians until after the hostages were released. And the State Department is now acknowledging that the money was being used as leverage. I wonder how long it took them to come up with that word. Leverage. So it wasn't ransom, but it's leverage. In other words, there was a direct connection to the hostages. Once again, we were lied to. Now, I don't want to minimize this point. If we're treating seriously the way Ryan Lochte made the Brazilians look stupid, consider what it is from the Obama administration, including Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, that we have been lied about. We were lied about how we evaluate whether or not there was active terrorism going on in the nation of Libya. That was a pretty doggone important point given the fact that Libya had been undergoing regime change with the fall of Gaddafi. Americans died. We were lied about that. Now, an important question. Did we pay money to the Iranians to get hostages released? We were lied to about that. I remember when I was a kid, 9 trillion years ago, when the Soviet Union was still in charge and Eastern Europe was part of the Soviet bloc. The government controlled all media. And they put out lie after lie after. They always lied about the United States, and they lied about conditions in the world. They told bald-faced lies. And I remember as a kid just being so shocked by that. You usually hear this in the context of a public service announcement for something like Radio Free Europe. You were asked to donate money or to support Radio Free Europe because Radio Free Europe was sending these radio signals in to Eastern Europe and even into the Soviet Union so that people could learn the truth because they weren't hearing it from their government. We now need Radio Free Europe here in America. Oh, yeah, that's right. I think I'm on Radio Free America. That's the purpose, I guess, of this program. It's the purpose of an alternative conservative media. It's the only way people can be told the truth about any of this stuff. First of all, paying the ransom is a violation of federal law, which is why I guess they had to lie about it. Secondly, we now learn that there's an extra $1.3 billion that was sent over there. Whether or not Obama was paying money to get hostages released, or whether or not he was using the hostage release as just another excuse to send $1.7 billion to his friends in Tehran, isn't the point. The point is that the American public has a right to learn about these things and decide for ourselves whether or not these are good policy decisions or not. We can't trust the government anymore. Now, there are some people who then take this to a level in which they never believe anyone about anything. They simply presume that everyone in government and everyone in a position of power is lying to them. When that happens, the government loses legitimacy. If Trump wins, his feet need to be held to the fire. The very least all of us should be able to demand from government is even when government does things that we disagree with, that it be truthful about what it is that it is doing. As I say, I think this started with Clinton, Bill Clinton, and his inability to level with the American public on just about anything. And it started with his need to cover up his personal scandals. Much of the lying that occurred under Bill Clinton was based on the scandal stuff, the lying about Whitewater, the lying about the firing of the travel office employees, the lying about the women, the lying about Monica Lewinsky, the lying about what was going on, the lying going back to his personal conduct in Little Rock, the lying about John Wong and Charlie Tree running money from China back to Little Rock and then into Democratic coffers. Hillary's lying, primarily, prior to her becoming Secretary of State, about personal matters to cover things up. But when they transition into making lying a part of public policy strategy, they change the nature of America. I don't want to make too much of the Ryan Lochte story, but where do you think we got this idea that lying is the default response to anything? It is not who we are as a country. How many times have you heard someone say, my word is my bond. When I shake hands, that's better than any contract. And we look upon people who live their lives that way as admirable people. The way the Clintons and Obama have run the country is completely contrary to the way that we as Americans have wanted to live our lives and to think about ourselves. You generally don't have to lie unless you have things that you need to cover up. It's not just that they've been covering up bad policy decisions and mistakes. It's that they've now made essentially the official means of communication with the American public being the lie. Do we really want to extend that for 4 more years? And do we really want to say to ourselves that that's okay? These people who find equivalency between Trump and his antics and Clinton. You understand, therefore, that you're putting Trump and some obnoxious tweets and Trump and his lack of seriousness about certain policy detail on the same level as essentially treating the American public as patsies to be lied to about every public policy decision. I don't think we should treat it so cavalierly. I promise you we're going to take some phone calls here. My name is Mark Belling, and I'm sitting in for Rush Limbaugh. Mark Belling sitting in for Rush. 1-800-282-2882 is the phone number. Saugerties, New York, and Bill. Bill, it's your turn on the Rush Show with Mark Belling.
Hey, Mark. Very upset. I'm a father of 5 daughters, 4 who are in the United States military, 2 are currently in, 2 are in or out. I've been out.
All daughters?
All daughters.
Wow.
I have 2 son-in-laws who are currently serving because you know how military guys are. They pick on military girls and they get married.
That is how it works.
4 right now that are overseas, in harm's way, and this president with his "a ransom is not a ransom" has made it more difficult for them, more dangerous for them, and everyone who serves with them. And his issue with Black Lives Matter, my one daughter who did not go in the military, her husband is an FDNY first responder. So I am very concerned that the policies under the current administration, which I believe Hillary would follow.
Yeah, I want to pick up. I want to pick up, Bill, on your first point about your concern for your daughters, and I don't want to directly personalize it to upset you further, but you are right. When we pay a ransom for the release of hostages taken either by terrorists or an overseas government, we merely encourage them to take more hostages. It becomes a good business. If this was 300 million or 400 million or 1.7 billion, divide that by the number of hostages, you see that it's a pretty good deal for the people who take hostages. While everyone applauds efforts to get Americans back safely, the problem with the payment of money is that it makes everybody who's in harm's way, and look how much of the world is dangerous right now, a target to be taken knowing that the United States will pay money. Here's the next problem. What about other hostages that we have overseas or anybody taken in the future? Is the government going to, ante up the money there and there and there? If not, which individuals do we say we're going to allow to simply fester overseas, and which ones are we going to pay for? That's the problem with doing this. In the case of Obama, by lying about it initially, in fact, lying about it for months when they said that this was a scheduled payment, it was only recently that we learned that it was in cash in an airplane, which is not the way international transactions normally occur, that we were able to learn the truth about all of this. The debate that we're having here is something that should have occurred at the time that the payment was made, and we can evaluate these things. But you are right. Every American now, and even let's suppose Obama is telling the truth a little bit here, which he's not. But let's just suppose for a moment he is, and that the money was scheduled and its connection to the hostages was only secondary. That's not how terrorists are going to interpret it. They all think now the United States of America pays tens of millions of dollars when hostages are taken. Why wouldn't they then take hostages and call up Obama and say, hey, send over another jet load full of cash? They have endangered all Americans by doing this. It's very, very reckless what they did, and they never leveled this with us in doing it. Thank you for the call, Bill. One point I want to make on that. Everyone knows in the world that we live in, you've got to deal with seedy characters around the world. There are back-channel negotiations that go on, and people can be given things in exchange for doing things for us, and I'm not naive enough to think that we don't have to do this. This, however, was money sent by the United States government and a negotiated deal with our government that got right over to the Iranians. It was not only a terrible public policy decision, it was something that he knew he needed to cover up and then lied to our face about. Biloxi, Mississippi, and Tim. Tim, you're on the Rush Limbaugh program with Mark Belling.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for taking the call.
Thank you.
Listen, I wanted to talk to you about the lying, and you kind of hit on it earlier that, we started accepting that it's okay back in the 90s. But just out of curiosity, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I do have a couple of psychiatrist friends, clients of mine. I went to them over the last couple of weeks, and I didn't want them to know anything was political, so I told them that I was talking about my son. And essentially I laid out exactly the pattern of behavior that we see out of Hillary Clinton. Lying despite the fact that, you know, there's visual evidence right there in front of you, and then lying about the lying. And asked them, I said, you know, what's the deal? What can I do? And actually both of them were very concerned. They said, well, and this is a commonality between the two of them. They few different thoughts, but essentially they said, you've heard the term and you're familiar with the term sociopathic behavior. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, you know, that's indicated by a lack of compassion, a lack of accepting responsibility, a lack of caring about anybody's well-being beyond their own. Mm-hmm. And at a minimum, your son is exhibiting sociopathic behavior. And I said, well, is that considered a mental disease, a mental illness? And they said, yeah, in extreme cases it is. And one of them then went on. He said, listen, he said, it could be something else, particularly if he lies when he's caught, if he lies about the lying. He said, that actually crosses over. He said, he may have convinced himself that he's telling the truth about these things. In other words, he legitimately believes his own lies.
Well, what you're raising is whether or not Hillary has a disorder, as opposed to just lying because it's a tactic that gets her through the moment or gets her through this week and moves her forward. I don't know what the answer is. Clearly, she's got all sorts of issues. There's no denying that. As to whether or not it's sociopathic behavior or just overt cynicism, do consider this. In the case of most liars, the type that your psychiatrist friend was talking about, the lying becomes self-destructive. It causes you lose interpersonal relationships, you lose your job, you can't be trusted by anyone. Let's be honest about this. In the case of Hillary Clinton, the lying has worked. So if it's a tactic, it's been rewarded. She is right now apparently the favorite to be the next president of the United States. That's something that we need to sit back and swallow about what we're allowing to happen here. Her lying has worked. Had she told the truth about Benghazi when it happened, who knows? Maybe Obama would not have been reelected and she would have been blamed for mismanaging it. Had she told the truth when the emails came out, yeah, I let all of our national security information float around on some cockamamie server that was being run out of my house in New York and being routed through a main server in Denver, and I didn't care about it because I just wanted to keep things. That probably wouldn't have worked. Their tactic is to lie. When the truth comes out, act as if it's old news, and then lie about the fact that the lie has been revealed. The reality is, whether she's a sociopath or not, that lying has worked for her. She might be able to lie her way right into the presidency of the United States. Mark Belling in for Rush Limbaugh. Mark Belling sitting in for Rush Limbaugh. I've tried to tie together the whole media frenzy over the Ryan Lochte and the other three swimmers apparently either embellishing or totally making up a story about being robbed in Brazil. Two of the Americans have paid fines. The third one's about to do so. Lochte himself is putting out a statement. He doesn't really admit that he lied, but admits that he regrets saying what he's saying. The fact of the matter is, though, that the Brazilian authorities never bought it, and they were extremely aggressive in exposing the lies. If only we could bring those Brazilian authorities to Washington, replace Comey and the FBI, and send them after Hillary Clinton. Get the Brazilian police on Hillary Clinton and her lies. They'll nail her. Mark Belling filling in today for Rush Limbaugh. We've covered a lot of breaking news on today's program. Paul Manafort out as chairman of the Donald Trump campaign, now firmly in the hands of Kellyanne Conway and the guy that I don't fully trust from Breitbart, who I think are the right people to run the campaign. We've talked about the Ryan Lochte story. We've talked about America's acceptance of lying that the Clintons have dealt to us. In the first hour of the show, I offered my comments on the part of the Never Trump movement that can't seem to shut up about how much it despises Donald Trump and how stupid Donald Trump voters have to be, and the part of the pro-Trump movement that evidently doesn't understand that Donald Trump isn't running as an independent but is running as a Republican and therefore needs to unite the Republican Party behind him. The reality is that Trump can only win if the Paul Ryan wing of the party, plus the Ted Cruz wing of the party, and even the Kelly Ayotte wing of the party unite with the Donald Trump wing of the party. Winning elections is all about addition, not subtraction. The time to fight and argue is once you're in power and you decide what it is that needs to be done. The alternative is to just continue on this path of destruction of our country by electing people who don't share American values, don't believe in American values, and can't even level with us. Which brings me to the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation is now announcing that it will stop accepting foreign money if Hillary wins. Well, isn't that beautiful? I guess that means that domestic bribes will continue to be accepted, but no foreign bribes if she wins. But think about that. If she wins. Do you know what happens every time President Obama talks about gun control and banning guns? Gun sales explode. Because Americans are fearful that the government actually is going to stop them from being able to buy whatever weapon. People run out of the gun shop and figure, I'm going to get the guns now. So what do you think this Clinton Foundation announcement is? This is, send us the money now. After all, y'all know Hillary's leading in the polls. She's going to win. That's the message they're sending. So you foreign interests that want to have a good, fair hearing from President Clinton, you better send the money in now. And then won't accept the money if she wins. So what's the cutoff? Is it election day or is it inauguration day? Will they have an extra 2 months that they can kick it in between November and January if she wins? The very fact that this foundation exists, the very fact that we've been able to link the millions and millions and millions of dollars that have gone to the Clinton Foundation, much of it then paid out in expenses and salaries to the Clintons themselves, with public policy that has been implemented, shows you how sleazy the whole operation is. They're not even saying they'll shut it down. They're saying that if Hillary is elected, independent trustees will oversee the operation of the foundation without the direct involvement of either Chelsea, Bill, or Hillary. First of all, nobody believes that they're going to take their hands off of it. Second, why won't she shut it down? She figures, hey, I'm winning anyway. This has been a great big giant moneymaker for us and gives me a good way of finding out who my friends are. So the foreign money is going to stop if she wins. But in the meantime, you got all of August, all of September, all of the dictators and despots of the world, all the multinational corporations, all you foreigners who want to be able to buy off Hillary Clinton during the 4 years she's president should she win, get your donations in now. I mean, this is what appliance stores sell. This sale will end in 48 hours. Buy now. This is what we're now reduced to. I do want to spend a moment or two here in this hour of the program talking about the rioting last weekend, and that's what it was, rioting in Milwaukee after the shooting of a police officer. But we're also going to take some calls from the Rush audience during this hour of the program. So let's get fired up and start with some phone calls. 1-800-282-2882 is the phone number. Let's go to Virginia Beach, Virginia. Joanne, it's your turn on the Rush program with Mark Belling.
Hi, Mark. I just wanted to tell you how I've got 3 millennials, very first time to vote, a niece and 2 nephews that are enthusiastic Trump supporters, but they've also done their research on Hillary Clinton, and they can sit there and defend why they are Trump supporters and explain to their friends why Hillary is not a good choice. And they watched their uncle and I go to Washington, D.C. and protest the health care bill, being part of the Tea Party, and they've really paid attention, and they're doing their research, and I'm just so very proud of them that they're not thoughtlessly doing this. They're researched it, and they're just going for it, and they're trying to persuade other people to also vote for Trump because Hillary's just a bad idea.
It's always dangerous to generalize about large groups of people, but if ever there was a generation that the generalization usually holds up on, it's the millennials. So much that you observe about some of them is true of many of them. And most polls indicate that Trump is doing just terribly among millennials, and you could see why that is. This is a generation that has been taught all about feelings and inclusiveness and so on. It's also a generation, when you consider that Bill Clinton was elected in 1992, it's 24 years ago, it is a generation that its entire life has seen a government that is fundamentally dishonest with it. I don't think that you can necessarily say that that was true during the W. Bush period, but for most of their lives, lying was something that was just out there. So they presume that it is a given. It's one thing to arm yourself with a set of facts and develop an ideology. But if you're going to base all of your decisions on feelings, emotion, inclusiveness, of course you're probably going to be repelled by a guy like Trump. And I do think Trump has to understand that. A lot of this does have to do with tone, and his tone has been something that not only has brought him a lot of supporters, it has turned some people the other way. The reason why I argue, as I mentioned earlier in the program, that he's still in it is that he is running against as flawed a candidate as either of the two parties has ever put out. Even the supporters of Hillary Clinton know she's a liar. I mean, the FBI director Comey, in whitewashing what she did, acknowledged that she's a liar. Everybody in America knows that Hillary Clinton's a liar. Some people are just going to say, I'm okay with it, or, well, she's still better than Trump, but they all know that she's a liar. That being a starting point puts the opponent in the game. This still is Trump's election to lose. And some people are arguing that he's been doing nothing but losing it. But it means he has an opportunity to turn things around. And I think that his speech in North Carolina last night set a very good tone for the campaign. If he can show some discipline as a candidate and focus on those core issues that he hammered and why he believes in them, I think he can still win things. Here's the other thing. People presume that the Hillary lying is all history. She's going to keep lying, and she's going to be caught in another lie, and another lie, and another lie. She's got to do 3 debates with Donald Trump. She's going to lie during those debates. At some point, there can become a lying breaking point. She's testing it. How much lying can a human being get away with and still be elected president of the United States? It's possible, though, that this is like the Olympic pole vault, and eventually she's going to cross the bar, and the lying is going to be too much. Thank you for the call, Joanne. Let's go now from Virginia to West Virginia. Morgantown. Keith, you're on the Rush Limbaugh program with Mark Belling.
Oh, thanks for taking my call, Mark. I just had a comment about these never Trumpers. I held my nose and voted for their candidates, Romney and McCain, before, and it can be done to, if the Republicans kind of stick together, they could actually nominate Trump, which I thought was kind of interesting when he said that you think he still might have a chance to win. I don't know about that, but I am a Trump supporter, so no matter what he does, I'm still going to vote for him.
Why don't you think he has a chance to win?
I think that the bias of the media is definitely going to be a big factor in it.
It is.
I mean,
it is, and it's something to overcome. On the other hand, the media was biased against Reagan in 80 and 84. Admittedly, it wasn't as bad then. They were biased against W. Bush in his 2 elections. They were biased against the Republicans in 14 and 10 when the congressional elections were nationalized and the Republicans won. The reality is that the media bias is something that's always going to be there. I don't think it's something that can't be overcome. It doesn't mean that it's a fait accompli, that because the media is biased, that Democrats are always going to win, because if that was the case, we wouldn't have any Republican governors in the United States. I can tell you that from my own state, Wisconsin, where Scott Walker has been since he was elected just under siege, he is despised by the left. The media in Wisconsin has been obsessed with hyping stories against him. He had to put up with a bogus John Doe criminal investigation that hyped criminal charges about behavior that never even occurred. Yet he won all 3 of the elections that he had to face. The media bias is an enormous hurdle to have to overcome. And if the media bias wasn't there, I'm not sure Democrats would ever win anything. But it doesn't make things an impossibility. The fact of the matter is that Trump is within 10 points in almost every one of the battleground states, and the support for Hillary Clinton is extremely soft. You've got about 35 to 40% that are simply going to vote for her because she's a Democrat. For her to get to about 50% or 47 or 48 or whatever it's going to take means that she has to appeal to this group of people that doesn't like either candidate. Both candidates have negatives that are around 70%, which is unbelievably high. So you're going to have a lot of voters who are going to vote for the candidate that is less unattractive than the other. That's just reality. There are enthusiastic Hillary Clinton supporters. There are enthusiastic Donald Trump supporters. But there are tens of millions of people in this country that don't much like either of them, and they're going to make a choice. And I think Trump can still get them. When Trump said last night, you know, I'm not politically correct, and sometimes I've said things that I wish that I hadn't said, I think that there's a ring of truth to that. I think that people know that Donald Trump is kind of a guy that shoots his mouth off, and Donald Trump is a guy that has to react to every little thing that's said about him. But I also think that most people realize that at his core, he's not a terrible guy. You can't look at his family and think that this is somebody that is an awful, horrid human being and raise children as good as they are. I think that there are people that are still sizing him up and making up their minds. I know from myself, in terms of going from somebody that didn't like Donald Trump at all to somebody who's now rather enthusiastically supporting him, I had to take his measure. And there are the components of him that I clearly am not a fan of. I think that there's a sincerity to him. I think he cares about his country. I think that when he sometimes offers too much bluster, it's because he does deeply care about the direction of the country. There are people that are still trying to figure this thing out, and there are votes that may be on Hillary's side right now that he can still win back. The best thing that he has going for him is who it is that he's running against. I'm Mark Belling, sitting in for Rush Limbaugh. Mark Belling, I do a daily radio show in Milwaukee. Bo Snerdley suggested that I ought to offer my take on the rioting that happened in Milwaukee over the weekend following a police shooting of an armed suspect. Obviously, I have limited time here, and talking about the background and what led to all of this would take even more than the entire 3 hours of the Rush program. So this is a short version. So I want to offer, I think, some of the most important points that might not be apparent to somebody who doesn't live in Milwaukee. First of all, unlike Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, it was a relatively small group of people that were involved in the burning and the looting, and it ended rather quickly. This was not something that was widespread, and it was not something that was supported by most in the African American community. The neighborhood in which they rioted and burned 7 businesses, in fact, is a predominantly black community. One of the businesses that was torched is a black-owned liquor store. The people who argue that we need to have more jobs in central cities, well, these are all places that employed, at least in the case of many of them, employed African Americans. There wasn't much support for it. The day after the burning occurred, there were a lot of black Milwaukeeans who went into that neighborhood and tried to pick up the litter and tried to clean things up. There were vigils that were held praying for peace that included both blacks and whites. The reason it didn't continue is there was very little belief in the African American community that burning down our own neighborhood was going to accomplish anything. As for whether or not this was all triggered by a shooting by a police officer, yes and no. We have had in Milwaukee 2 years of a handful of agitators, the Black Lives Matter movement, they call themselves Coalition for Justice in Milwaukee, that have been hammering and pounding on police and playing to easily influenced young males, as I said, for 2 years. They've been looking for a reason to cause trouble. With regard to this shooting, hours passed before the first building was burned. This was something that was simmering with a handful of people, probably caught the police unaware, probably didn't have the police ready to go into full riot mode to stop the trouble from occurring. Was it directed directly at police? Well, there are some people who hate police because that's been drilled into their heads. But the reality is, and I can say this as somebody who knows some police officers, knows quite a few police officers, Milwaukee has great cops. Milwaukee has a significant number of African American police officers. The cop who shot the suspect in this instance was himself black. They went to the same high school. There's some indication that they may have even overlapped. There are neighborhoods in Milwaukee that have been beset with incredibly violent crime. Drug dealers and gang members run certain neighborhoods. The only people who go into those neighborhoods to try to help are the cops. I don't know any Milwaukee cops who signed up for that job and went to the police academy because they want to go out and start harassing black people in the hood. It's not why they do it. In the case of many, they do it because they actually want to make things better. On my show in Milwaukee and on my website, I posted an email I received from an African-American Milwaukee police officer, 16 years on the job. He was so disheartened. He said, I've spent my entire career trying to build bridges between the police and the community. Yet I find that there are many people who hate me just because I am an officer. His squad car was one of those that was bashed in. Somebody threw a brick or a cement block, smashed in its windshield, could have killed him. And he was wondering why he was doing this when so many people apparently despise him just because of his career choice. It was very sincere and very heartfelt. I think, and I hope what that officer understands upon reflection, is that not everybody hates him because he's a cop, but some people do. The argument has been made that this is what happens when you have people that are angry, without hope. Well, of course many of them are angry. Virtually none of them who did the rioting have fathers. Many have mothers who are themselves criminals or have neglected them. They feel as though they have no hope in their life. They don't know why they're angry, but yes, they are angry. And they become uncivilized. And they lash out by trying to kill cops by smashing them with bricks and burning down buildings in their own neighborhoods. But none of that is because of anything any police officer did. Nothing any cop has ever done has ever created the conditions that led them to this type of anger. The reality is that Milwaukee, like most big cities, has been run by nothing but liberals for a century. Rush is going to be back on Monday. Buck and I have had the opportunity to fill in the tail end of this week. If you've missed any portion of Rush's show this week, that's what Rush 24/7 is for, and you can sign up at rushlimbaugh.com. 1-800-282-2882 is the phone number. Do I have to keep giving the phone number out? I never know what's too much and what isn't on this show. You listen to Rush, you have to know that number by now, right? Just like ingrained in you. Only once did I read my Milwaukee phone number on the air when I was doing the Rush show. Badge of honor that I won't do it again. Let's go to the phones. Joe in New York City. You're on the Rush Limbaugh program with Mark Belling.
Hi, Mark. How are you today?
I'm great.
Retired captain from the New York City area. I was a police officer. It's funny. I was just talking to your screener about. I just left. I was a cop back in the late '80s, back by Yankee Stadium in the South Bronx. And I just was driving through the neighborhood, and I was looking, and I noticed there's no change. I'm born and raised in the city, and I remember my father taking me as a kid through certain neighborhoods. And, you know, he would show me the street corners, and you'd see people, and he'd say how the next generation, you'd see the next person, and the age progresses from kids standing on the corner all the way up to elderly people. And it's the same cyclical, same cycle of poverty. I'm going to use the word complaining. Some are legitimate and some are not legitimate, but I just can't wrap my fingers around the reason why people would still want to vote for the same people that have suppressed them since the 60s, since 1965, I would say, with the, with the way things have changed in this country.
Well,
it sounds like you have the same problems in Milwaukee. I feel bad because 85% of the people in those neighborhoods are there because they have to be, and they don't wish it upon themselves. I'm far from liberal, but I'm being dead honest when I seen little kids playing in the hydrants with the sprinklers on just a little while ago, and I just look at those kids and I say, it's unfortunate, but they probably don't have, I hate to say don't have a chance, but it's going to be tough for them.
Well, I think that the way you put it, don't have a chance, they do have a chance, but it is tough. Thank you for the call, Joe. I appreciate it. It's tough. Everyone knows, I've talked to enough police officers, they tell me that when they go into Central City neighborhoods, that virtually always the young people that are involved in trouble are those that don't have a father in their lives and many times have a mother who's either on drugs or involved in crime or alienated herself. Those kids that are being raised by intact families or the strong mothers, kids have a far greater chance of getting out ahead. Now, we know that there are exceptions. There are many people, they find something in their life or something inspires them, or they're independent of thought and they avoid the gangs, they avoid the trouble. they don't get tied up in that life. With regard to the people that are angriest, I look at 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old young people, primarily male, who live in the central city areas, particularly in my city of Milwaukee. Many of them have mothers who themselves have been involved in criminality. They have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 siblings, often with different fathers. The fathers aren't involved in their lives. The school system, the public school system in Milwaukee has a few decent schools, but most stink. So they've had a poor education. They're not on path to get a high school diploma. The only life they know is out there causing trouble. We have a juvenile court system run by liberals in Milwaukee that continues to put them back on the street, give them a little bit of fake counseling, slap them on the wrist. You have a welfare state that the United States has created that has allowed people to go on generation after generation after generation without employment. If I'm raised in that environment, how would I turn out? I don't know, but I know that I had a lot greater chance in life being raised in the environment that I was raised in. The question is, who's to blame for this? The reality is that Republicans, with a few exceptions, the caller was from New York City is one of them, most major American cities haven't had a Republican in charge of anything in them for decades. Our sheriff in Milwaukee, David Clark, points out that the last time Milwaukee had a Republican mayor was 1908. What we have had are Democrats or socialists. They actually ran as socialists in Milwaukee, and a lot of them won. Since 1960, it's been all Democrats. They run nonpartisan, but they are members of the Democratic Party. The majority of the members of the Common Council are liberal. The school board tends to be extremely liberal. The public policies that are in place, the social service agencies that are run, they're run by liberals. Republicans have tried to influence public policy. In Wisconsin, we have been fighting for years to get kids out of the failed public school system and into private schools through a program called School Choice, called school vouchers many places. We are resisted by the liberals. They have a vested interest in propping up that failed school system because many of them work in it. They keep demanding more money for social service programs that they primarily run. Those of us who have suggested that we need to bring about standards of accountability are rejected as being punitive. We have tried it for decades the liberal way. The liberal way is to throw money at the problem, to continue to make excuses for individuals that have caused trouble, continue to put them back on the street until they commit crimes that are so violent that we have to respond to it. You see where it's gotten us. It has failed. Now, the caller asks why, given the environment that these folks live in, do they keep voting for Democrats? That answer is simple. Because Democrats keep promising them more money. In a short-term situation, of course, you're going to vote for the candidate that seems to be willing to give you more. Democrats make it clear. We support increases in the minimum wage. We support increases in food stamp programs. We're going to give you this. You recall the notorious video of the Obama supporter from back in 2012 saying, why, black woman, why wouldn't you vote for Obama? He gives you the Obama phone and this, and she rattled off all of these social service programs. So they perceive in the short term that the Democrats are on their side. The problem, of course, is that these giveaways have done nothing but to create long-term dependency. They don't work. But put yourself in the other guy's situation. You're dead broke. You don't have any employment future. One party saying, you break the law 19 million times, we'll just keep slapping you on the wrist and put you on probation. Well, if you're breaking the law, that sounds pretty good to you. If you're dead broke and somebody's going to give you a free cell phone, that sounds good to you. If you don't have a job and somebody says we're going to raise the amount of money spent on food stamps, that sounds good to you. The problem is that it doesn't work. We've tried it their way for decades. It does not work. Now, the caller mentioned New York City. New York City has turned around. I remember when I came here for the first time in my life, and I think it was late 70s or early 80s. It was eye-popping. It's just like it is in all those movies that are set back in that era. Looked at Times Square. They were selling drugs. I could have bought drugs on the street in Times Square. The strip joints were out there. The hookers were on major streets in the biggest city in the country. Hookers openly soliciting people. The whole time I was there clutching my wallet as I walked down the street because you heard about all the street crime. The murder rate was out of control. Look at New York City now. Times Square is Disneyland. It's probably per capita the safest big city in the United States. Even neighborhoods in Harlem are now reasonably safe. Very low murder rate, as I said. What happened was Rudy Giuliani came in and he changed some things. He sent the police officers into the neighborhoods to aggressively enforce the law. He created incentives for businesses to come in and make money in a place where the only businesses that have been operating were running rat holes. Not everything worked. And there are still bad relations between a lot of African Americans in New York and police officers. But things work better. Trying it a different way helped. What you have a voter bloc, however, that is short-term focused on all the money that's to be given. And you have so many community leaders who are themselves on one form of a dole after another. It's hard to break that cycle. Now, if you think it through logically, we elected an African American as president. This should have been, aside from Obama's ideology, this should have been a tremendous opportunity to unite the nation. Obama didn't want to do that. Can you imagine the difference in the attitude in the African American community if Obama's message had been, doesn't matter how difficult you have it. You can make it in this country. You could even become president of the United States. I did. Look at me and my life. This is still the country that gives all of its citizens the greatest opportunity of any nation in the world. So don't get involved in drugs. Don't get involved in crime. Cooperate with the police. Live a decent life. Accept God in your life. And you can move forward. Things can be better. He never said that. Instead, he just kept preaching the division. Every time there was a police shooting, he created the impression it was because it was racist cops. He keeps putting out the argument of dividing people. Well, you don't have a shot. The Republicans don't care about you. And he just kept pushing the same old mantra. If anything, racial relations in America are worse now than when his presidency started. It should have been an opportunity. Did he want things not to get better? On the other hand, there is a silent group, African Americans, who I think reject the lifestyle they see around them. They don't want to live in neighborhoods of crime. They appreciate it when they see some economic development and jobs. But if they speak out openly, they become targets. I mean, you've got a no snitching mentality in place in so many of these communities where people are terrified of these gangs. They're all running around with guns and they're all threatening people. They rule these streets. There are more of them than there are police officers. If I can give you one lesson from what happened in Milwaukee, it's A, it ended quickly. B, many communities are ready to blow up and are looking for an excuse. It's how you react to it. And finally, for the people who keep arguing that if you're African American and you live in a big city in this United States, it means you have no chance. Ask yourself who's running all of those cities in which people don't have a chance. They're all run by liberals. So who's to blame for the fact that you don't have a chance? My name is Mark Belling, and I am filling in today for Rush Limbaugh. Suffolk, Virginia. Steve, you're on the Rush Limbaugh program with the guest host, who is me, Mark Belling.
Yes, Mark, I'm a never Trumper, and I'm not part of the establishment. I am a conservative Christian, small government, pro-life. I'm a Cuccinelli Republican, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting tired of hearing people accuse me and people like me of electing Hillary Clinton. That's not at all the case.
Well, except here's the problem, Steve. One of them is going to win. I don't see the libertarian getting any traction, so one of them is going to win. That's just reality.
Well, I understand.
So you don't want. So I mean, and I have not criticized the people who are never Trumpers for reasons that I explained earlier. The problem I have is with some of the national people who have very big platforms who have just every single day pound on Trump and pound on the never Trumpers because I think they depress turnout for all of the other Republicans that are out there. And I also think they exaggerate their point. In the case of you, what I would encourage you to do is take a look at the values of the things that you believe in and ask yourself which candidate is going to give you a better shot of achieving some of the things that you care about. And I can't imagine that that's going to lead you to Hillary Clinton.
Unfortunately, I have done exactly what you're describing, and I mean, good grief. It's the difference between poison and a gunshot to the head. It's a sad thing.
You think there's no chance that Donald Trump will put good justices on the United States Supreme Court, and no chance that he'll aggressively address ISIS?
Well, I think that he probably will, but I don't think he'll get 60 votes in the Senate for any of the 11 that he's put up. And then I think we revert to his... The fact of the matter is that other than Obama's last nominee here, the Republicans confirmed Obama's appointees, and most of the appointees of the president are going to be confirmed. You can tell yourself that he won't achieve any of these things, but that's quite different from your original comment, Steve, that you didn't believe that he would do any of it. The reality is, I think thank you for the call, most of the people who are opposed to Donald Trump know deep down there's a chance that he will govern from the right. There is no chance that Hillary Clinton is going to govern from any side other than the crooked. I do want to take a moment on today's program to mention a woman that many of you have never heard of. And the reason you haven't heard of her is the point of the story. Kim Rhode is the first human being on the planet to win a medal in 6 Summer Olympics. No one has ever done it. She won a bronze last week in skeet shooting. That's the reason you don't know about it. The Wall Street Journal did an editorial on her today, and I thought that was a wonderful thing to do. The reason you don't know about it is that she wins her medals by shooting a gun. She's also a Republican, strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and backs Donald Trump. 6 medals in 6 Olympics on 5 different continents. I have to think that if she was an avowed leftist who wishes that she didn't have to shoot a gun in order to win her sport, y'all would know a little bit more about her. My name is Mark Belling, filling in for Rush. Mark Belling, filling in for Rush from Eastern Command today. The staff's about to leave, and I'll head out to your mansions in the Hamptons, which is where I assume all you rich people live. I do want to mention 2 other things before we get out of here. First of all, Ashton Eaton won the gold medal in the decathlon. He's an American. This is 2 consecutive Olympics in which he's won the gold medal. I would like to offer Ashton some advice. Learn from your predecessor gold medal decathletes. Do not marry a Kardashian. Doesn't work out. And this one, there's a big story in today's Wall Street Journal about Arnold Palmer. And it mentions the famous drink that Arnold Palmer kind of invented that he's known for, which is to mix iced tea with lemonade. I read this and it says, I still drink it today, but now I add a little cherry juice. The Arnold Palmer recipe has changed. He knows what he's talking about. Everybody put some cherry juice in your Arnold Palmer. Bye.